systems nominal.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the show. Today we are talking to Mr. Jarom Swenson. He is an artist and mech designer, along with his brother over at Mech Bay, which is their own little startup company creating essentially 3D printed action figures based on Western mech designs of their own creation and others. They also have a number of settings under their belt here, among others Colony Wars 2060, Our Millmen, which is a kind of, Earthlings versus Space Invaders kind of deal. They also illustrate and write their own Battletech fan comic called Protomech, currently in development there, as well as their own personally designed setting agnostic war game called Dice Wars, which is, perfectly suited for all this stuff. Mr. Swenson, welcome to the show. You are a very busy man.
Well, thank you for having me on. I do appreciate you having me on.
Well, thanks. Admittedly, I am pretty busy too, but, I'm glad to be able to fit people into the schedule myself. So thank you for coming.
Definitely. Oh, man. Admittedly, I'm probably not as busy as I should.
You're either too busy or not busy enough. Either way, there's no way of balancing this shit.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I wasn't kidding about you being busy, though, because that is a lot of stuff to be working on, all in just two people. My understanding is you are the main, creative force here and also the main artist behind all this stuff, and your brother takes care of the writing, yes? At least according to their bio.
Well, pretty much. I do a little bit of the writing, but my brother also does a decent amount of writing for some of the aspects and some of our settings. Man, I probably have the equivalent of some amount of ADD where I just keep thinking about setting after setting after setting. It's like, oh man, I would really love a setting like this. Well, okay, I'll just start drawing it. And then it just kind of snowballs into this huge project we end up working on.
Yeah, well, especially for those two of those that I mentioned, the Armelmen and the Colony Wars ones, those ones go into a lot of, especially Colony Wars, there's a lot of little lore tidbits and world detail that you come up with, just to the extent of just the shit show the world's become by 2060.
Yeah, it's very much, man, very much one of those settings where it's just like, well, what if things just got worse? And I imagine a lot of people can imagine that these days. Things are only going to get worse. So, well, let's make a war game out of that.
Yeah, I mean, sure, it's worse, but they're mechs, so it all balances out really.
Hey, I'm perfectly willing for World War III if there's mechs in it.
You and me both. Yeah, I mean, really, does it count as proper war crimes if nobody's getting stepped on?
Yeah. It's like that moment in Judge Dredd where he's like, hey, robot, pull off his arms and all that stuff. It's like, yes.
That movie may have done some things wrong, but in terms of the look, it got the comics really good. That's for sure. I mean, having one of the ABC Warriors just show up straight off the page. That's just I mean, yeah, Stallone should have kept his helmet the whole time, but what are you gonna do, right?
I watched that movie so many times growing up. Oh, loved it. The overacting, everything. Now, I never read the comics, but I eventually learned out, oh, okay, this is what it's actually supposed to be like. And I'm still glad we got Dredd later on. So you watch Judge Dredd for the good classic 80s cheese, and you watch Dredd for a good hardcore look at the setting.
Yeah. Now, if we could get the screenwriters from that to work with the visual designers of the 90s Judge Dredd movie, now then you'd be cooking with gas right there.
Carl Urban in some very skinny clothes and big baldrins. You know what? I'm for it.
I mean, there you go, right? Yeah. So enough of the future. Let's go back to the past here. How did you get involved in this whole mech thing to begin with? What got you interested in this?
Oh gosh, man, when I was growing up, had Toonami and all that stuff, watched a lot of the anime coming off Toonami. I watched Gundam Wing growing up. And over time, my taste started to develop. My brother also was buying old technical readouts for Battletech. And so I'd have these readouts and I didn't really read them, growing up. It's a bunch of technical stuff, but I like to look at all the mechs in them. My brother also kind of got a bunch of other different settings. For example, he got the old heavy gear, the Dream Pod 9 heavy gear. the old RPG books, and I
Yeah.
loved looking at those too. So I kind of started to get this idea of mechs I really liked to enjoy. My brother even has the old which one was it? Uh, the the technical readout where they introduced the protomechs.
I think it's one of the clan ones. Forget exactly which one. I'll have to look that up.
Uh, 3060.
Ah, there we go.
It's the one with the Hotman on it. You know, the Hotman has the cigar small laser in its head, but it has protomechs on the cover. I don't know. There's something about like a bunch of these smaller mechs fighting a larger mech that really started to imprint in my mind. Going to the back, and I did read that lore. I read the lore for the protomechs, and it was like really cool to this idea of essentially neural controlled mechs. And for the longest time, I thought that was like, hey, if we were ever to have mechs, that's probably the way we're going to do it. Is that just control them with your mind and all that stuff through some type of cybernetic.
It makes a degree of sense in the sense that if you have like some kind of neurally controlled vehicle, the easiest way to translate the your brain's natural way of thinking about movement is to have the vehicle itself move in the same way. You're not translating moving legs, your brain saying, okay, move this way, which would normally go to your legs, to wheels or treads or something like that, and having it try to translate that particular impulse into that particular different kind of movement. But instead it's like, okay, move your legs. Okay, I'm gonna do it, it's just bigger.
Yeah, it's all based on instinct. And I swear, well, when it comes to modern day and how all these companies are starting, like Boston Dynamics, are solving the whole issue of bipedal robots, they're essentially made the equivalent of kids that are slowly over time learning how to walk.
Yeah. I saw my son. We went to an industrial convention looking for some CNC machine stuff, and my son ran into his first Boston Dynamics robot. Quite
Oh,
just like like some quad dog shaped one. And he was like, "What? It was adorable."
put an M4 on the back of that thing. Just,
I mean, there's already some stuff in the works on that stuff. There's actually a paper that was released in 2018 for general release. What was it called? DB. What was it called? Here it is. Ground Warfare in 2050: How It Might Look by Alexander Cott. That was released from the U.S. Army Research Laboratory in 2018. They actually made a convincing case that legged vehicles of whether manned or unmanned would be part of the conventional battlefield alongside all the rest of that stuff. So
oh yeah.
some people are genuinely thinking about probably not something Battletech scale, but protomech or smaller kind of scale for any kind of either drone operations or for general mechs.
And when it comes to that, just like what is possible for and what is practical for a war setting, this has been kind of like the cornerstone of everything I draw. And what I see as practical, what I see as something that would fit in a war setting. And a lot of this was influenced when I was younger. I saw an anime called Gasaraki. You ever hear this?
Takahashi. Ryosuke Takahashi.
Ryosuke Takahashi.
Yeah.
This guy.
I've come to realize that pretty much all the mech anime that I really like is made by this guy.
No kidding, right?
Yeah.
Not too long ago, I finally got around to watching Dogram, Thing of the Sun Dogram, and like,
God damn, that's good.
It's like this is so BattleTech. It's perfect.
I mean, they literally ripped off so many
It is.
designs from it. The Shadowhawk, the Griffin, the Thunderbolt. Yeah.
Battlemaster.
There's a lot of the quad mechs as well.
Scorpion, Goliath. Oh,
Yeah.
it's so good.
Oh,
And
have
so-
you seen like the Japanese redo when they did the Japanese version of BattleTech?
From the source book they made and with all their different artworks.
Yeah. And you look at the Shadowhawk in that compared to the Dogram, and it's like, holy shit! It's like a massive game of telephone just happened. It's like,
Well, like here's the thing: from their perspective, they know what the Shadowhawk looks like because those guys probably saw the anime, and they're like, well, here in Japan, copyright laws are a little bit more stringent, and we live right next to them. So maybe we should go a little bit in a different direction.
yeah.
But
Although,
it gives
if
us
I'm
some
not
great
mistaken,
designs.
I think the guy who did the designs for that was actually either worked on Dogram or on maybe Macross or something, where a lot of the other ones, like the Phoenix Hawk and
Well,
a lot of the Destroids, became the
so
Marauder come from that too.
when it came to mechanical design, as far as I understand it, the same creator who made all the Dogram designs was the same guy who did all the Gundam designs. This
Hmm.
guy has done a lot,
Oh yeah,
and I forget his name, but he did a lot of the designs for Ryosuke's work as well, including the Votoms. So you can kind of see a similar design language between Votoms, Dogram, and Gundam.
yeah,
And so when it came to Dogram and Votoms, since he's working for Ryosuke wants a more realistic design aspect, and that's where it goes. The design artist for Macross is the guy, Robotech Macross is the same guy who did all the original Armored Core designs, essentially started the whole Armored Core universe. So it's
damn,
just different design aesthetics, and you kind of notice it with the original designs. There's a lot more squat, stumpy designs when it comes to Dogram and Votoms. Even if they're not physically small, they look thick.
yeah, yeah.
And
They
it,
got
as soon
some
as you
weight to them.
and as soon as you go over to Macross and Armored Core, life. They're very tall, skinny, but they have that very focused look to them, where they look like this was probably created exactly from this jet fighter, and so on and so forth.
And you can probably take off like one, as it's aptly demonstrated in both
Mhm.
cases.
Now, I'm not sure if the same guy designed uh, because in a series you probably have multiple artists who might work on the same series. So I don't know if the same guy designed all the uh, all the destroids, such as the Tomahawk and whatnot. He probably did, but it's just as far as design language, Macross and Armored Core would follow much more the Veritex and all that. But and then BattleTech, and I always say this, BattleTech took the reins when it came to all those designs for Macross that ended up not really being used in any of the rest of the sequel series
Yeah,
afterwards.
because they end up focusing mostly on the Veritech stuff
Hmm.
versus the Destroids, the more ground-based,
Hmm.
stompier ones.
Exactly, and so BattleTech slash MechWarrior took that torch and ran with it, and so that's where we could get all these awesome designs.
Yeah, exactly. Because, admittedly, once you have Macross, one thing that really made it stand out versus the other mech series at the time was very much that whole the speed, the aerodynamics, the fact that they could turn into jet fighters and stuff like that, which didn't work too much for BattleTech when it came to the LAMs, but no, never mind that.
That's a whole can of worms that people will defend all
Ur
throughout.
be lamb, thy beloved.
But I tell you what, it's like you could see, like, okay, if Macross are mechs but jet fighters, Dogram and BattleTech are mechs but tanks.
Yeah.
Or like IVs and whatnots. You
Well, in
kind of
that
see
case,
that
that's a
very
bit more
similar.
heavy gear in that case for the
Hmm.
IFV description. Definitely tanks are like, big land dreadnoughts in the case of the bigger ones.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. And so it's all about design language and how it's like thin, fast, squat, heavily armored.
Yeah. Big covered in guns, run away.
Yeah. So yeah, like I watched Gasaraki that one time, and it just the size of the mechs and just the way they moved and just kind of the type of combat they would get into just really started to solidify in me growing up what type of mechs I really enjoyed. And I realized none there's very few series that actually cater to these mechs.
Yeah.
Gundam, I'll always appreciate Gundam for getting me into mecha, but this series is very much into that louder, bigger than life type deal where all the mechs are just kind of a little too good for being military combat vehicles. The only
Yeah.
the only really good Gundam series that I personally appreciate is Eighth the Mess Team.
Eighth MS Team, I kind of like Stardust Memory as well.
Yes.
Of those two are probably my favorites, although admittedly, I find most of the Gundam anime, this is one of the reasons I like Takahashi's stuff too, is that it kind of doesn't quite completely, but mostly sidesteps the soap opera kind of feel that a lot of anime has, regardless of genre in many cases. Where, it's like, okay, I get it. You're mopey, you're angsty, get to the point.
Hmm.
Which is
Although
something
I
I
was,
appreciate about Krin Kashim and Dugram. He's conflicted about a few things, but he gets the job done. No
mhm.
moping.
Yeah, it's like you're not trying to having some drama meltdown or a love triangle when there's a war going on. Let's be
Yeah,
honest. It's like you
it's,
you you man up and you become a soldier.
yeah, which is
But
something I appreciate about Dugram. Especially, I think honestly, between Dugram and say some of the more the original Gundams, like the original one or Zeta, whatever. Definitely, Dugram is more to my tastes in terms of both
mhm.
like the setting, the characters, and all that stuff. Nobody appears. There's one kid, and he's not annoying, and he shoots
Mhm.
people. So,
Child soldiers. It's so true.
which Gundam has its fair share of those. Even going up to the most recent one with Requiem for Vengeance,
Mhm.
which I wish I liked more than I do. At some point, I'm gonna have to do a video on
Yeah.
that one. It's just
It,
like,
the main problem with, and I don't want to talk about it for too long, but the main problem with Weapon for Vengeance is that it's just kind of all the character stuff. It's just kind of not that great.
yeah, the voice direction, it just wasn't the voice delivery isn't that great. There's
The
sometimes like
animation's a little kind of weird. Just
yeah, there's
if
sometimes
you,
where the voice doesn't feel like it belongs to the character speaking.
Mhm.
In some
Yeah,
cases,
if you ever see Gundam Igloo, it's the exact same issue. All the mech combat is awesome, but as soon as it gets to all the characters, CGI characters, it's like you should have went for a stylistic approach instead of trying to go realistic because this just doesn't look good.
yeah. Which yeah, it could probably, especially when you have like cameos from one character from 8th MS team when he shows up in full CG. It's just like, okay, that character design does not work in CG.
Yeah, it's like, oh gosh, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
And there were a couple of animation issues. But yeah, ultimately, I did like the actual designs of the mechs that they came up with. It's the stuff that surrounds it. It's one of those times where how some people say this time the show isn't about the mechs, it's about the characters. Not seeming to realize that all mech shows are about the characters. That's why they have pilots in the first place.
Yeah,
But this one
every
definitely felt more like, yeah, this one was about the robot fights instead of about the characters.
that's like that one thing everyone will say about a mech show. It's like, oh, it's not about the mechs, it's about the characters. Everyone says that for their favorite mech show.
Yeah.
Yeah, is it true? Sometimes it's more true than others, but at the end of the day, you kind of need to have a good balance of both.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, otherwise, what's the point of having pilots inside the
Hmm.
mechs in the first place? You might as well
Hmm.
just have everything be, drone combat to that point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I did like the thing of going into your own stuff instead of talking about everybody else's. Like starting with the Colony Wars, which is probably one of the, as I said before, one of your more detailed settings here. I like the fact that this world actually went through its own drone warfare phase and then decided, okay, yeah, this comes with some serious downsides. We're going to scale this back and bring back some actual human pilots into this.
Oh yeah, definitely. Let me bring something up here. Maybe I can share a screen and just have like a little slideshow going off for some of the artwork.
Well, I'll be having some stuff showing up here anyway as well. But the basic idea being that yeah, drone warfare works really well so long as you can keep the connection going and people don't figure out how to generate massive ECM bubbles that are going to
Oh,
screw everything up.
yeah, it's like exactly. It's the first drones, and as we're seeing right now in the modern world, is that drones are actually really useful. But at the end of the day, a lot of these drones all use the same GPS. They're using someone's GPS who happens to own all the satellites for doing it. So eventually, drones are going to probably go into more radio controlled when they can't reliably use GPS. And then eventually, it's going to get to the point where someone's like, you know what? There's literally thousands of drones flying us over every day. Why don't we just turn on? We have better tanks that are manned. Why don't we turn on this big gigantic machine that scrambles all these signals and just send in our better tanks? And they have nothing else to use against us. So
Yeah,
eventually, I think at the end of the day, there's always going to be a need for a boots on the ground. They're always going to be needed. They're going to have to enter every single building, every single infrastructure, and they're going to have to take the cities. And so drones will make way to just more traditional vehicles eventually. And
yeah,
then as far as my setting, everyone started out using drones, mechanized drones with bipedal legs, quadrupedal legs. And then as soon as it became not as viable to use drones, they're like, okay, well, we're going to have to take this Boston Dynamics robot that is, hopped up on steroids, and we need to put a man inside it. So the thing has to be like 3 times bigger, and it now can carry a 20 millimeter, autocannon, and the thing's now walking around in urban environments and whatnot.
Yeah, which is pretty much one of the best places to have any kind of mech combat on this scale, because you're still taking advantage of the maneuverability of infantry and ability to take cover and stuff like that, while also packing far more armor and firepower as well.
Exactly.
Yeah, and also tanks can't shoot at you as well because they got buildings in the way, which is an advantage there too.
It's like mechs are going to cover that spot where tanks can't go, and while tanks are like, oh, awesome, these things can go everywhere. Not always. Like forests, like forest environments are one of those places where you always see tanks going through a forest, but it's going on a pre-established road, and not every forest has thousands of roads for a tank to go down. So eventually you'll have tall bipedal walking machines going across the forest alongside the infantry, and they become the new vehicle that supports the infantry.
Yeah, plus all it takes is knock down a couple of trees down that road and the tank is having some problems.
And being able to traverse a mountain and trees and all that stuff, it worked really well for the Germans during World War II when they went through the Ardennes. They had to cut their way through, but they still made it through. And once they bypassed normal supply routes and defensive perimeters, they revolutionized war in that way.
Yeah,
and so
before them, there was everybody crossing the Alps from Hannibal onward.
Yeah, and so now you can have that. You can have mechs going into that forest. They don't have to cut down every single tree along the way, so they can make these routes a lot faster. And so I can easily see kind of like this urban / forest fighting vehicle.
Yeah, which does create a fall into that niche that we're seeing a lot of these days, where so much of the global population moving into urban environments. When you have this kind of warfare, especially on the scale it's being described here, is where it's colony wars, as it is. Just for to recap a bit, basically in the advance with the global communications and society and civilization has kind of gone pear-shaped, seriously pear-shaped. And now the United States, the Russian Federation, and the People's Republic of China are carving up the world into various colonies under their own umbrellas. And, well, not only are they fighting each other, but they're also fighting various rebellions and resistance groups, including Canadian one. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Every time I share the idea of colony wars, the first thing that people say is the word colony. And the first thing they think of is Gundam colonies. The colonies from Gundam. And so they're like, oh, so like this is happening in space. No, this is happening on Earth, and it's old school colonialism. It's like there's only a few countries that are technically left. Everything else has been carved up by everybody that happens to have nuclear arsenals. So it's just a way for me to have a fun almost perpetual war setting. At least that will last a decade, and I don't have to worry about World War III because everyone just kind of, at least in this setting, agrees, okay, we're not going to invade homeland America, we're not going to invade homeland China, we're not going to invade homeland Russia, but everywhere else is fair game.
Glorious proxy wars. So basically, you've essentially made your own front mission in many ways.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Which has that same kind of, large power blocks dividing up, the world into different large, large power, economic and military power blocks. And large wars are pretty much a thing of the past, but proxy wars and, hot button conflicts are happening everywhere anyway. So there's still, constant warfare no matter what.
Oh, yeah. And I eventually we're going to get more lore done for it. And we want to make 3D models for all these mechs I've been designing. And so that we can have essentially a good 28 millimeter scale, which is the same scale as a 40K, and have that as a game system. And we will use the Dice Wars system that we have as the base the base rules for this game system.
Yeah. What can you tell me about how you went about developing the system? It's a good one because one thing I like about it is that it is basically not only setting agnostic, but also scale agnostic. You as the player determine the capabilities of whatever, mech you have or piece of infantry or, unit that you're using, and basically just, give it to different stats based on the number of dice that you have from your grand total, your total for your army, and just give it out to each particular unit or squad of units. and that determining the actual power level in a very organic way, I find. So that's an interesting way of going about it. What inspired that particular methodology?
Dice Wars is inspired by a couple of things, but Dice Wars was made at the very end of me like, okay, I've been playing Warhammer 40K for a couple of years now. I've wasted money on it, and it's just new edition, and my army's always fluctuating from mediocre to just okay. And I'm just like, I just got tired of playing 40K. But I started to take some lessons here and lessons there, and there's an old game. You might have heard about it called Mobile Frame Zero.
I have heard of it, yeah.
So Mobile Frame Zero is this Lego mech game, and it's all essentially Votom scale. All the mechs are Votom scale. And so it uses a very simple system for constructing mechs where, hey, each mech has one piece of equipment, and that piece of equipment is represented by dice and how strong that weapon is. And so you have a mech that has like 4 weapons on it and like a speed upgrade and stuff like that. So I started to take that aspect and it's like, okay, how can I build a, and it's much more skirmish scale. Like Mobile Frame Zero is like, this person will most likely have 4 mechs and you will have 4 mechs. We're going to have a skirmish scale system. So I thought about the same way about how to do that in a larger scale, proper war game setting. And it evolved from there. And Dice Wars is very much like, well, I want to design it so that we could make our own army rules and factions you can play as, but it should at least have a building system that allows you to take whatever 40K miniature or just toy you have lying on your shelf, and hey, like so that you could teach your son basics of wargaming and also have him bring his toys to the board. And so it's all about how do you stat this toy, how do you or this model, and how good is it on the battlefield, and how you can bring infantry along with that and squads of other things.
I may have gotten a bucket full of little army men for my son for when he's older. So it's in the closet right now. So I'm thinking ahead of this.
So yeah, it's like, hey, if you ever, it's a Dice Wars is very much kind of on the simpler side, and so it's easier for you to teach kids how to play, and it's also kind of more of a fast-paced game, and so you'll never, if you ever like, hey man, I don't have multiple hours to play 40K, and I don't have a whole entire day to play BattleTech, so we could bring out some Dice Wars and we can use the exact same minis and just have a war game through that.
Yeah, and it scales very well since depending on the scale that you're using, for instance, you can take like, okay, I have this big old, spaceship versus, this squad of space fighters and like that, and you can stat them exactly the same way as you would a tank and a bunch of infantry on a smaller scale.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And so it's very much that game we want to develop with expansions and modules. So we eventually want to build, and we do have plans for it, a more BattleTech focused version of this game that has the equivalent of jump jets, a heat system for for dealing with flamers and all that stuff, and even including pilots and all that. And we want to develop this game more and get to the point where it's kind of like just our in-house war game system that people could use our whatever miniatures we sell to them or action figures we sell to them and use that for them.
Yeah, like you could just grab your average gun plug if you feel like it. Like I got this one here that I just built. It's
oh yeah,
this is exactly our kind of style right there. Yeah, it's a Moderoid line from Good Smiles Company, I forget what it's called. Oh, the cool thing about this one here, the pilot actually fits inside there.
Oh, kick ass.
Yeah. So that's a cool little thing. But it also shows off the scale because it's got this guy here. So you got regular human comes about to the knee. So it's like 2, 3, 4. Let's see, 2, 4, 6. I'd say about 7 to 8 meters tall. So that's, on the bigger end of the scale that we're talking about. But like, a commando, battle mech, a light battle mech or something like that is pretty much on the scale of that. And I think that, one of the things that attracts both of us to that is that it's a lot more feasible just in terms of verisimilitude and believability compared to the multi-story tall things, or even like
Mhm.
going to extremes, the kind of crazy ass shit you see like walking cathedrals in battle in 40K or anything like that,
Mhm.
where you don't feel as though, okay, you built this thing, I'm gonna just shoot the biggest target in the battlefield with everything I got, and it's gonna go down before it even has a chance to do anything. And chances are it would fall down the second and try to take a step anyway, because this is Earth and we have gravity.
Yeah.
But
Uh, like the way I see it is that a lot of my influence for the scale of my mechas was hopefully determined by that Gasaraki, but also kind of by I live in rural Idaho, let's say. There's not a lot of massive buildings around me. Most buildings rarely go above 3 stories tall. And so living around here is like, oh, I want to imagine a big mech. Well, okay, what is as tall as that building over there? And that building's only some odd, at most 10 meters tall. And so I growing up, I imagined robots walking around and battling each other between buildings in my hometown. And that's kind of the scale eventually I kind of built towards when it came to all the mecha I like to draw. Things like Votoms, Gasaraki, Obsolete, if you've ever seen that.
yeah, I've seen some of that too. I didn't particularly like the animation style, but I liked the mechs that they had in there.
Oh, yeah. And so it's just everything within that small scale. Like we're talking 15 to 20 to at most 30 feet. And it all kind of feels very natural for infantry to interact with a mech when it's that tall. If it's equivalent size to a modern military vehicle, it already feels more realistic. If it's 50 times bigger than a modern military vehicle, it's like, okay, this is some god machine now. It's not like a normal combat vehicle. Things like Titanfall, big fan of those games. It's just like if you see that, it's like being inside of a mech. You're not so much taller than everything around you, and 2-story buildings become your cover.
Yeah.
And so, and I take this idea of scale and I apply it to my own like BattleTech art. And
Yeah, I've seen that too. You had a particular image where it was just like a bunch of mechs preparing to do like an assault on a building, and it's all BattleTech mechs, but scaled down to this scale that we're talking about. And then you actually had a separate image that showed where the pilots were inside of everything, so that was pretty cool.
Oh yeah. So every time I draw my BattleTech art, I uh, I applied that scale to it so that it I'm kind of forcing my idea of mecha onto the BattleTech community every time I draw these to varying degrees of success.
I mean,
Not
people will like
everyone,
what they like. Some people
yeah,
just really
true,
enjoy stepping
true,
on tanks.
true. And so I definitely like when it comes to all my art, I try to keep it within that scale.
Yeah. Going back to Colony Wars for a second, when you have also like a lot of mechs in that, different variations on like there's a different evolution going back to the early first mech that came out of some guy's garage that he was working on in his spare time. Which I love the fact that the first confirmed mech to actually appear showed up on some social influencer's feed because he lost control of it and smashed out through his garage. Yeah, and the fact that it was running off a cell phone and was still plugged into the wall for power.
I have to really appreciate my brother. His name is Jared. He helped a lot when it came to a little for Colony Wars for detailing little things about technology, as well as just like this origin story about this guy who takes this free program off the internet and it's like, okay, well, why don't I make a robot off of this and just you have a viral this streamer walking by his house when all of a sudden his mech bursts through when he presses forward on the joystick, bursts through the garage.
Yeah.
And so it just kind of escalates from there. And then as far as the Colony War setting, a lot of the tech innovation is not coming from like Russia or America or China, because they have, just like any established military, they have an idea of what warfare is. And so the first mechs that are actually used in combat that are actually piloted are actually from a resistance group in Ukraine during a conflict over there. Not the same conflict that we're experiencing today. We said,
Yeah, how did you feel? When did you come up with that particular concept for this? And was it before or after the current kerfuffle?
it was before the current kerfuffle, and that I have to also appreciate Jared. He was just kind of watching, just kind of if you were paying attention to kind of world events before the whole current conflict that's happening over there, it's like, yeah, this is gonna boil over eventually.
Yeah, that's
And
the
so
problem with these things.
we incorporated it into our setting, and it happened sometime in the 2050s in the colony war setting. So
Yeah,
we were off a couple of decades.
2053, I think, if I remember correctly, looking over that
Mhm.
stuff. I could be wrong, could be 2052.
Yeah.
But yeah, the bear hunter mechs that basically just took out Russian tanks during that particular fight.
Yeah, and it was all kind of based around this urban environment and the Ukrainians using maximum like guerrilla tactics. And so, but eventually this would inspire more and more mechs being used because people started to realize, okay, so we can actually use these in warfare and not instantly believe that they're going to get smashed by anything else on the battlefield. They have a niche, and it's a very relatively important niche in our ever modernizing world where cities are everywhere.
Mhm. Yeah, it's always come across to me like, there are certain ways we could get to an actual, combat mech. And ironically, Gundam actually you did cover this, is the idea of starting with power loader kind of model where it's an industrial thing, which makes a lot of sense because sure, a forklift is good, but if you can just like grab a crate, pick it up, and put it somewhere else with the same kind of dexterity as you can with a human, I mean, that's very handy to have. And if all you have is industrial mechs when the conflict breaks out, it's not too hard to actually just strap a couple of guns to them, put on some armor plate, and go to town.
Yeah, I mean, we have apparently we have uh, exosuits being used for logistics at least.
Hmm.
Well, probably at most, but it's just going to be one day. Some Marine is going to look at this. Some Marine is going to look at this power suit, and he's like, "I'm going to put a few carrier plates on that, and I'm going to strap an M60 onto the arm, and I'm just going to go to town someday." And
Yeah.
that might be the first instance, like generals would finally see. Oh, okay. So maybe we were being really unrealistic when we had all these stupid requirements for power armor. We just needed a basic combat platform. We didn't need to have it be Iron Man for some odd reason. Like you look at every time there's like, oh, they didn't exceed the expectations when the military was researching power armor. It's like they literally were looking like, hey, man, Iron Man's cool, but these guys can't make us an Iron Man armor for some reason.
They should have been looking at Starship Troopers, the anime, not the movie.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
the original source of all power armor. Love it.
exactly, yeah. I mean, all it would really take is for some idiot to try and assault a base when a Marine is wearing that thing or around in a warehouse somewhere, and him just kicking him and him going through a wall.
Yeah, I imagine like they're probably it's like, well, those guys are inside that building, don't really exactly want to get shot. So this guy's gonna walk in there with his power loader armor with all the armor possible, and just two shotguns on each arm and just start walking through it.
Oh yeah. Plus, you have all the different variations. So, like, you have those. You also have the equivalent of the Toyota with a machine gun bolted on the back. Versions of mechs that are also being used in various conflicts around the world. You got the Gump, which is basically the exoskeleton what you're talking about, which lets you run really fast,
Hmm.
which is a fun little addition to the name there. Not to mention all these different scales. You got some of these, like for instance, that bear hunter, the pilot is kind of like lying down on the top, kind of. It's
So
just
he's like he's like
yeah.
he's in a motorcycle pose inside its iron casket, and so he's like, and so they'll have a bunch of different mechs that have different poses, and it just becomes like the go-to. Hey, this is the way we design mechs. All
Yeah.
American mechs, the pilot is sitting down backwards, and you kind of get to see design language between different factions in the setting.
Yeah, and you've got a good number of them. I'm still looking at numerous, like, not every faction has a lot of mechs because some of them are just like smaller resistance groups that are left over from governments that were swallowed up by the big three there. But just in terms of like the sheer variety, you've got a lot of stuff to work on. just in terms of like capabilities, specializations. You've got the creating rebellion people. You got the different get overviews here for the United States, Russia, China, the JASDF as well. So you have a lot of different possibilities if you are going to go into the full war game. Full war game for this. You've got a lot of stuff you can choose from, depending on which side you want to play as, and what do you want to bring to the battlefield.
Yeah, I tell you, it's not because unfortunately, since I set this up in our like the future of our real world, when someone looks at this war game, they're going to be like, well, what about this country that I'm from or that I really like my ancestry from? What are their mechs? And I'm like, okay, I'll draw those.
What are the mechs of Luxembourg?
Yeah, it's like,
What
okay,
are
I'll
the
draw.
Dutch?
It's like, okay, I'll draw the mechs of Scotland for some odd reason. But no, I definitely, this setting, unfortunately, might take forever for me to hash these out. But eventually I want to get to the point where anybody from anywhere in the world, I highly doubt I'll ever get that, popular. But if they wanted to, it's like, hey, what are mechs like in my side of the world? And I would like to make an armed force around that.
Now I'm thinking of the version of Tequila Gundam that you would make.
Gosh.
I mean, if we're talking mechs from around the world, I was going to bring that up. I mean, come on.
Or the Holland Gundam.
Oh, God,
literal windmill.
I mean, technically that could block things from the front. Never mind, it's stupid. It's incredibly dumb.
Oh no, that's dumb, stupid. Gosh.
The worst part is they did have a Canadian one, but it's basically like a lumberjack, but not even. It's just like it has axes on its arms and stuff. It's not even dressed like a Mountie or a moose or anything, or a beaver. It's just like, come on, man. Make it shoot like, maple syrup dispensers or something. Like, something cool. No.
Or like the American Gundam is like the weirdest mashup of American culture. It's got pistols, but it's also a boxer, but it's also a football player. I'm just like, okay. It's like, be the American that the Japanese say you are.
Be the mech that the Japanese will. Yeah, be Mel Wolf Chaos, basically. Oh, God, I love that
That's
game.
kind of one of the funny things. Like the largest mechs in the colony war setting come from Japan because Japan's kind of obsessed with giant robots.
It's like, oh, you fuckers think you're going to out-robot us? No way, we're making the better ones. We invented this shit. I mean, technically, H.G. Wells invented this shit with War of the Worlds, but we're not checking that.
Gosh, it's a combination of H.G. Wells and Robert Heinlein, because even just the idea of a fully mechanical power armor, if we are to believe it, that inspired Gundam. Mm-hmm. Was Starship Troopers.
Yeah, the version of it that showed up and that was illustrated in Japan had that particular power armor that would be then used for the Starship Troopers anime, and mm-hmm. that definitely had an impact. I mean, you look at something like what is it called, Melskin Panic, the Maddox 001. That one is a direct reference to the Starship Troopers armor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, ironically, I think the first picture of the viewers that I ever saw was a Starship Troopers one. It was the one that you showed the skinnies and a rifle bug.
Oh yeah, that I was definitely like, I have a few fan arts of that, and it's just essentially I was combining the anime, the Japanese OVA. I was combining the Starship Troopers live action films. I was combining the old Roughnecks animated series.
God damn, I love that show. I can't believe it ended on a goddamn cliffhanger. Just as they're getting to Earth, for crying out loud.
Oh no, man! I remember seeing that. It's like, dude, that's it. That's all there is. Oh, but I love that series, and so like I was combining a little bit of everything when I did this fan art for Starship Troopers, and so I did skinnies, and then as I learned more about the books, I was like, oh hey, their bugs actually have rifles, like laser rifles and stuff like that. So I imagine it like chemical lasers, and mm-hmm. so I designed a laser rifle bug.
Yeah, because the Verhoeven movie has its issues for book lovers. Mm-hmm. Let's face facts. I've gone into detail
put it
about
lightly.
There's a continuous
debate about that.
Yeah,
And there will always be a debate about it.
Oh, I mean, there's always going to be a debate about the original book.
Hmm.
Even less, even more, it's various adaptations. But one thing I did kind of like, regardless of how it differentiates itself from the actual source material, but the way that the bugs are constantly coming up with new versions of ways to kill the humans, and they're basically just using biotech instead of the more high tech, industrial high tech that they use in the book.
Hmm.
Basically, yeah, it would make perfect sense for them to develop a long range laser capable bug, especially
Oh
one with
yeah.
like, as you showed, like has a little eye on its rifle. The rifle itself is alive too, so it's like literally using an extra eyeball as a scope.
It's got like parallax vision. It's got like so many eyes that it can see, both close and far, and have very, very situational awareness and track moving targets. So, like, yeah, these things would be super deadly.
Yeah.
But it's like Paul Verhoeven's work with the bugs in Starship Troopers not Paul Verhoeven. Well, okay,
Phil
admittedly, the
Tippett.
movie did influence a lot of bug related media, but the book as well. And it's just like, where do you get your Zerg from? Where do you get your Tyranids from? Where do you get every single bug menace and every single game
Yeah.
in media since then?
It's either
It's
Alien or the Starship
Yeah,
Troopers.
it's as influential as Lord of the Rings is to D&D.
Yeah, I mean, without question.
Mhm.
Yeah, and then speaking of space, there's the other setting that you've gone really into depth with. The R. I'm not sure how to pronounce this. Armilmen? Is that how it is? Because it has a little
That's
asterisk in there.
Yeah, that's the way to pronounce it. Armil. In fact, real Mech is love is Armil. RMIL.
Oh well,
So
there you go.
we like to pronounce it Armil since it sounds like mill as in military.
Yeah, well, this one
Yeah.
has definitely got that Starship Troopers influence to it. That's for sure.
Hmm. Oh,
That
this
yeah.
this this setting is essentially a mixture of Starship Troopers, a little bit of things here and there, but a big influence for it is that we wanted kind of like a Saturday morning hoaxy setting. And what's more Saturday morning with power armor than freaking Exo
Exo
Squad?
Squad. I love that
Oh,
show.
oh, we love it so much. Exo
Oh
Squad is so great. It's Exo Squad's kind of interesting. If you start looking at some slight parallels, it's kind of like Gundam for Americans.
yeah, it was literally called the American anime at the time.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
because it's all set within, the solar system. And it's kind of like it's Gundam in that aspect. It's all set in the solar system. There's a big war happening, and it's kind of a war to the own uh uh, humans' fault, because it's their slave class rising up, and then their slave class becoming horrific
Yeah.
monsters throughout
It's
the
their
entire
second
series.
slave class. The first time they sent a bunch of convicts to the Saturn moons to,
Yeah.
mine there. They abandoned them when they created the Neo Sapiens. The first ones became the pirate clans that were, been causing them problems ever since. And then you have not one, but two wars with the Neo Sapiens.
That's why I love about old Saturday morning cartoons, because there was some dark stuff. If you
Oh yeah.
thought about it for a second and you could watch it like as an adult, like, dude, there's some serious stuff that's happening here. That guy's an alcoholic. They
Yeah.
literally have an alcoholic character as one of the main
There are
characters.
there are no ejection seats in this setting apparently, because I
Well,
have
that's
seen
true.
more than my fair share of space pilots die horribly in the black vacuum of the void. Like, and also there's actually it's not consistent, but there are some episodes where when they destroy one of the capital ships or something like that, there are no explosions. Instead, it's like white clouds of the oxygen inside and the water vapor from people's breath just kind of like vaporizing into space as the ships
Mhm.
break apart. They don't just blow up like they do in other settings. Someone actually thought of that. I don't know how much influence they had, at least in terms of consistency from episode to episode. But there are some episodes where it's like,
It's
holy shit,
you,
someone did their homework on this.
there's like one of the designers and one of the writers, probably read, science magazines at the time, just like how all the colonies in Gundam are, an O'Neill cylinders, yeah,
Yeah.
or O'Neill cylinders. It's like they were studying things that were being talked about that time. So our men, the reason why we went with that name is essentially, I was one day to my brother, I was like, you know what? We have a 3D printer. Why don't we just design a series of essentially army men, but for all the sci-fi stuff we wish we had when we were kids? We
Mhm.
wanted to have sci-fi. All of our 3D printing stuff is like, why don't we just make the toys we wanted when we were kids?
Amen.
And so he's like, okay, we're gonna make a basic, army men, but they're all in power armor, and then we want to have an alien menace, so we're bringing in an alien menace, and so it's kind of humans versus aliens Saturday morning cartoon. But then we start thinking, well, what's all the lore behind everything? And we just keep building lore. It's like, oh, what's the relation between Earth and Saturn and Jupiter and all that stuff? And Pluto, yeah, that has humans on it. Is it considered a planet? Oh, yeah. At least by that point.
It's a place where you can fight. That's the important part.
Hey, when you have a whole entire nation of people living on moons, I don't think anybody's going to complain about Pluto being a planet or not, because they have their own independence.
Yeah, I mean, admittedly, when you're that far out, it's kind of hard to have any kind of central government telling you what to do. Let's face facts.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah.
And
actually, one thing I wanted to ask you about, in terms of like your influences, there's an anime from 1993, I think, called Big Wars. You familiar with that one?
Oh gosh, 1 second.
Because the setting blurb for this and that match up have a lot of similarities in certain ways.
I want to say I've seen this at least once a long time ago, but not in any way. I can't really say it influenced.
Okay, because
it influenced our mill-men.
Okay, so
a lot of stuff did influence our mill-men.
Yeah, in that case, it's just a coincidence because the basic idea: the aliens invade after Earth starts colonizing other planets and basically telling them go back home. The aliens in that are basically doing the exact same thing. The aliens are called the gods. At least they refer to themselves like that, and say all species have their own place to be, and you are moving away from yours. This solar system's called for. Go back to Earth, or you're all gonna die.
I'll give you a little bit of spoilers for our mill-men without too much of a spoiler. But the aliens invade the solar system, and the solar system in this aspect has been fully colonized. We have humans on Pluto all the way to Earth, and every planetoid in between. And it's been kind of relatively peaceful of recently. And then you have aliens come in. And these aliens are essentially, we're sending you back to your home planet. Everywhere else, we're just going to go extermination campaign for everywhere. And you kind of will find out eventually that there's a reason why the aliens are doing this, because Earth, everything around Earth was already given to another alien species as far as the galactic alien governments are concerned. It's like someone had already staked a claim on Jupiter, Pluto, Saturn, and it's this, so essentially we have the exterminators coming in, getting rid of all the pests and sending them back to their home planet, because at least the galactic government's like, oh yeah, we have a species that already exists on Earth, so that's their home planet, that's where they're going. And
that's when we nature preserve for them.
And back all the hundreds of years ago, when we decided we were going to colonize the solar system for this alien species, humans only lived on Earth. And so by the time they got around, it's okay, they're finally coming their way over here. It's like, wait, where all these humans come from? Okay, send them back or kill them all, as long as they're in their little nature preserve on Earth. And of course the humans are like, crap, we can't let this happen, so we're gonna fight every tooth and nail along the way.
As is appropriate for humanity. Fucked
So it's like you kind of get this sense that the galactic alien governments and all that stuff is kind of like this weird bureaucratic nightmare because they didn't check to see that before they sent the aliens to colonize the rest of our planets, if there was actually humans that spread out or not.
Oh boy.
Maybe that hollow paperwork got stuck in with all the hollow paperwork stuck in the great archives.
Yeah, I mean, it could be worse. At least they didn't, demolish the place just to make room for a hyperspace highway.
Yeah.
Call them the Vogons. At least these invaders are a bit more, they're almost a bit more genteel about it. They're at least willing to give you a straight up fight instead of just disintegrating the planet.
Yeah. In this case, it's like, we have another alien species that wants to colonize these worlds. So we can't destroy every single planetoid in the solar system, and we can't leave them completely uninhabitable death worlds from just super nuking them to the ends of the earth. And so we have to go on a ground campaign with the humans all the way through here, and so that kind of gives the humans more of a fighting chance.
Yeah, because
because
let's face
they,
it, anything capable of interstellar travel trumps anything just
yeah.
capable of interplanetary travel, just in terms of capabilities. You
But
just,
I mean, yeah, sorry, yeah, no, but it's kind of true. It's like how many wars in our history where we like, oh, we're just gonna bomb this place and we don't care about living here afterwards. A lot of our wars before the modern times were very much, hey, we're going to invade this place because we want it. We're gonna hold it and we're gonna build colonies there. We can't destroy everything when
yeah.
we're invading this nation.
Yeah, you gotta piss off somebody real bad before they decide to go ahead and salt the earth at that point.
Exactly. As
Yeah.
at that point, that's the losers leaving that are salting the earth. So
Mm.
our millman is like we decided to go like, hey, we want to have sci-fi army men toys, but hey, let's throw in some fun little lore behind it. So we're gonna expand the lore on it more and more
Yeah, I saw
over
that you
time.
already introduced another alien species, kind of purple bug people.
Yep, it's like we kind of want to have it so it's kind of like an everything setting. So you kind of have your bugs, you have your protest slash covenant like aliens, and we want to have, hey, you want your squats? We kind of have squats in this setting.
I mean, it's been a long time since 40K has had those properly, so yeah, they pretty much opened the door for that.
They still haven't made squats.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it, you're gonna have some places with heavy gravity or high pressure.
Yeah,
You're gonna have people who grew up there are gonna be shorter than average.
yeah, leagues of photons, those ain't squats.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
still haven't seen squats. They have them in Nook
Yeah.
Ramunda, but I want an army.
One thing I do like about it, one, I like the fact that you've done with distinctive colors for the actual 3D printed ones, like, solid, army green for the Solar Army, and then the Pax Invaders are this nice orange kind of color, so that it really gives that feel of, as you said, like, kids' army men kind of thing, like,
Mm-hmm.
the tans and greens and stuff like that. I also really like the differentiation in terms of shapes and, concepts, because obviously, yeah, the Solar Armies, their units are very military. They look, like proper combat vehicles that we can imagine ourselves developing over time, as we get, more and more sci-fi. But when you look at the alien stuff, it's like they seem to attack mostly with like lightning bolts, which is, something that's, kind of interesting. They have, weird kind of curved, almost not quite insectoid, but spiky kind of like weird kind of designs.
They're also kind of a little bit ununiform with random bumps and bubbles here and there that
Mhm.
might have served a complete logical purpose for the aliens, but we have no idea what that little random hump on that shoulder pad is for.
Yeah, I also appreciate like we don't actually see the aliens themselves. We see their vehicles, their power armor, their mechs and stuff like that. But they themselves, I don't think we've, unless they are the purple bugs there that you were showing off.
That's a different faction.
Yeah,
The orange faction is the exterminators. The bugs are the actual guys that own all of our planets.
yeah, yeah. It's one of those things where you have to wonder like, are these invaders actually aliens, or are they basically like heavily armed Roombas and gardening shears sent out by some advanced spacefaring species?
Mm. No, it's like the Pax, as they're called, the orange aliens, essentially are super cyborgs, if you will.
Mhm.
And their whole thing is that their basic soldiers are all just super cybernetic all the way through, and they have layers upon layers of redundant organs and weapons and stuff like that. So trying to destroy an alien spaceship is like there's no way to really get it to erupt on under its own pressure from exhaling because there's 50 different 50 different redundant systems keeping the thing working. And so you have to pretty much shred it to Swiss cheese before you can actually get them down. That's why these aliens can get into melee combat because they'll take literally hundreds of railgun rounds before they drop.
Oof, that's nasty right there.
It's like I didn't want to have like blatant energy shields. Energy shields are in every sci-fi setting. For them, I was like,
Yeah.
okay, they're just tough. They're the definition of tough.
Yeah, I think the only thing with something akin to that is the what's it called? The Psion, which is one of the like command packs invaders, which can generate a gravitational like wave and just shred things with that.
Mm-hmm. Essentially using the exact same technology they use for all their gravity tanks. I'm just going to put these gravity emitters in my gauntlets, and I'm going to, crush you into a little ball.
Yeah, that's is good and proper. Uh, Plus, you also have the different human factions as well. At least there's a couple of things like pirate mechs and other things. So there is a bit of a history before the aliens arrive of human versus human fighting, which means that you have some variety as well there. If you don't want to just do the full alien invasion scenarios.
Exactly. We started like, hey, humans versus aliens, but we started to go backwards as far as the humans go. It's like, okay, well, how did humans uh, live on all these worlds, and what is the purpose of the Solar Army, as they're called? And essentially, they're like, they're in charge of keeping all this trade between Saturn, Earth, and every other planet going and uninterrupted. But that means there has to be pirates that are constantly harassing all these supply lines. And so you kind of get this feeling eventually that we hope is easily is shows in art and our designs that the humans are went from anti-piracy fighting to full scale. The Solar Army is now going on to a full scale, full war setting.
Yeah. And but in between that, you also had apparently at least go from one image of a civil war on the moon as well between different factions. So that's always another thing that's fun.
Civil War on the moon.
Moon Wars.
Try to stop the whaling on the moon.
Never stop the whalers. Always trying to get in the way. No, no, never again, never again. We shall wail in peace upon the moon, or we shall die, or you shall die, or I have no idea where I'm going with this. But it's just like, fucking hell, this is fun.
Oh man! But for those, we were really into our when we went to a convention in Boise, Idaho. We were really trying to push our millmen, and so we had designed an entire cosplay of one of the Solar Army power armors, and I have a video for that. Oh gosh, man, I'm gonna have to share that with you.
Oh, look forward to it. Yeah, I mean, I actually have plans along those lines too. One of these days to do something like that. But fingers crossed if I ever manage to get something worked up on that. But yeah, I mean, speaking of that, like, how much do you have? I know from your Etsy store that you already have like a couple of waves of these figurines already done and printed. So do you actually have the like? I see mostly like the STLs and stuff available for sale.
Mhm.
Do you have the printed models as well in terms of like if I just because I don't have a 3D printer. If I wanted these things, can I just buy them directly from you, or is it something I'd have to have printed?
As far as full PLA, which we use FDM printers. That's the ones that print from layers up for the viewing audience if they don't know, but not like resin printers. But we use FDM printers. But full PLA stuff will sell as STLs. Whenever we go to a convention, we like to sell them physically to people at a convention because we could just print a bunch and sell them there ourselves. But as far as anything that is completely 100% PLA, we want to sell STLs of. When we eventually make our Mech Bay product, that is something we will make exclusively ourselves and then sell it to other people because it uses multiple materials of varying different degrees that all require different settings. And so it'd just be easier for us for quality control to make it ourselves.
Yeah, that's always the thing when you outsource any kind of construction to other people. You always have to worry about making sure everything is at that proper standard,
Mhm.
especially if, as you say, it's multiple different materials that have to be assembled afterwards. If something goes wrong with one, nothing works, even if the rest is all good.
Mhm. Oh yeah, definitely. And so as far as our millmen, that we were going to go all the way with our millmen, but admittedly, it's an unknown setting. It's always going to be an uphill battle to try to share something that no one knows about. And so one day I was thinking to my brother, I was like, what if we made something a little bit different than just making another toy or making it another, miniature, and we just started making model kits. And so that eventually led into what we're doing for Mech Bay.
Yeah. So talk me through this. Like the basic idea is there's a underlying frame to these figures that then other things can be bolted onto. Is that it?
Yes. 1 second. Quickly, I was just wanting to send you some links of that Armo Men cosplay that I did.
Let's see here. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that is definitely. Oh my God. Yeah, that. You're gonna have to tell me more about how you ended up building that.
Uh, Basically, when it came to that, we bought some proper drywall stilts, the ones that you can, extend to like 3 feet to a lot more. And then we just essentially bought a bunch of cardboard and glue and just made this thing. I have to say most of this was I made the design for it. I drew the design for it, and my brother executed on making the thing. And I helped him anytime I can. But we made this thing. And it fell apart not too long afterward because it's cardboard and a bunch of glue.
Hey, it served its purpose. That's the important thing.
Mhm.
Yeah. My plan is to have something that looks kind of like that. I had the idea of maybe, you know how there's all these papercraft models of mechs and stuff like that?
Mm.
Just print one out at larger scale, cut
Mm.
it out, and try to see if I can modify it to assemble it to actually be something wearable. But the most important thing, the torso would have to stick out enough so that I could open it up and put a baby harness to put my son in there.
Oh, definitely. Oh, that'd be cool. It's
I
like I've
mean,
seen people do that for like a Dreadnought cosplay.
I am a good father. I have to think of my son.
No, you have to think of a way to use your son in your own cosplay. And okay,
Uh,
but as far as mech bay, it's like I was thinking just one day, you know what? People are constantly saying, "Hey, man, I would love the equivalent of a gunpla or Gundam model kits, but for like BattleTech." And then one day I was like, why don't we just do that? Why don't we design that? And I went to my brother with some basic things and kind of want to do some screen sharing here so I could talk about these things in order and give you the rundown of this whole entire design process.
see if it's possible.
I think you have to allow me to screen share first.
All participants, I think you're good.
Okay. Now, if I could remember how to screen share. Uh, oh, yeah, there
It
it
sort
is.
of surprised me that no, none of the owners of BattleTech have ever made BattleTech Gunpla.
Uh, a long time ago, there was Connects. They had like a partnership with Connects. Okay, do you see that?
Yeah.
Okay, they a long time ago they had a partnership with Connects, and they had like a summoner, and I think this was for technically Mech Warrior 3 or 4, but they had a summoner, they had a vulture that you can build, and it used Connects that you connect to each other, and then paper armoring that goes over it. But as far as Mech Bay, these were the original sketches I did because I had a very loose idea of how to do this. I was like, okay, we need like an internal frame that isn't made of PLA because PLA, you could get some good detail on PLA with an FDM printer. The thing is that it's kind of brittle and it's not very durable. And if you try to make ball joints with it, those ball joints easily rub each other too smooth to where eventually they're just not useful as a
Mm.
ball joint. So the internal frame had to be a different material, and we have eventually come up with two materials to use in tandem to make this internal frame. But the idea was like make an internal frame, and then everything else snaps onto it, and those things would be made from PLA. The armoring that would snap onto it would be made from PLA and have all the detail we need.
Okay.
And so it's kind of a little bit like a Gunpla model kit, but kind of like if you've ever had them, the old Bionicle Lego sets, because it wasn't the original Bionicle Lego sets. Like the later down the series, a lot of the the newest Bionicle Lego sets have like an internal basic frame, and then armoring is attached onto it,
Mhm.
and then you got your full-on Bionicle after that. And so I was kind of thinking along there. It's just a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. Let's see if we can make something with this. Some more pictures of it here is like, and I was thinking, okay, well, we need at least 3 different internal frames so that we can make a light mech, a medium mech, and a heavy mech. And the heavy mech could also double as the assault mech as well.
Yeah, because they're
And
really not
so,
that much difference in
yeah,
size once
and
with the armor
and the
on.
difference in size we can do with a little bit of finagling with like the foot, and the foot is like a platform shoe, so it's technically larger than the heavy mech. And so these were the original early design concepts, and I just wanted to like, okay, let's try to see if we can make this. And luckily for me, my brother is always willing to put up with my ideas, and he gets as excited about this stuff as I do. And so we started working on this, and I started designing what the general shape of the internal frame would look like: a small, medium, and large. And we wanted to eventually we're going to make a chicken walker
Oh
frame.
yeah.
And the whole point of the frame is that universally these frames will be used for the vast majority of our products. So everything will be built on these. And so because we have a universal internal frame, you could take parts from this mech and put it on this mech and make a whole bunch of Franken mechs if you wanted to.
Nice. Because yeah, one thing I wanted to ask is about the degree of modularity that you had in mind, both in terms of like the exterior and the interior frame.
Yes, exactly. And eventually, I want to show you an image of some of the modularity you can do with that. And so, more design processes. It took me forever to come up with this stuff because I have to draw the same thing 150 times from different angles. Um, my brother, and luckily, while we were trying to design this, we discovered this uh, creator on X called Ratapumke. If you ever get a chance, check out his stuff because it
Yeah, I'm
is
following him
awesome.
on X as well. Yeah.
Because he uses an eternal frame to make his models. All those armor platings, that's PLA, and it gets good detail. But that internal frame is a much more durable material called PETG, and that is a lot more durable. It doesn't rub raw too easily, and so you can have a model kit that can hold a pose for a long time with that.
Mm.
And so his stuff is great. If you ever get a chance, check his stuff out. And he had like some free designs that he just gave STLs out for free. And we made one with our own 3D printing. It was like, okay, we can use some of the ideas and techniques from this and make something that fits more into the design of Mecha we want to do and how we want to put things together. And so, uh, for example, right here, this is a. Can you see my
Yeah,
cursor?
I can see it.
Okay, this is a Ratapumke mech. And then we're like, okay, let's build our own frame from PETG. And so, for example, this was like the first iteration of the large frame. And this is like, okay, well, we want our mechs to be about this size. End product, our mechs are going to be 6 inches to about 8 inches tall. So if you can imagine that size, that essentially makes these the equivalent of a 28 millimeter scale battle mech, or BattleTech scale battle mech.
Okay, so like if an infantryman
Yeah,
is 28 millimeters, that one would be in scale with that.
yeah, exactly. As you can see in this image where my cursor is, that is an Imperial Guard uh, mini right there. And so that would be the scale that we're working with here. So if you wanted, you could hold a 40K-esque game of BattleTech with these action figures we plan to make.
Mm.
When we were originally designing this thing, we were going to use nuts and bolts to help retention. While the material we were using was pretty good and durable, it didn't exactly hold a perfect, strong retention. And so we used nuts and bolts for it originally. And here's a design of the final frame. Technically, not the final. We've gone back and forth, and we're trying to perfect the internal frame, because as soon as we can perfect the internal frame, everything else will be a lot easier to
Oh,
make.
that's for sure. Yeah.
And so eventually we went to two different materials, TPU and PETG. TPU is very, it's like a rubber ball. It's very springy, and TPU is very rigid. So a combination of those, like a very rigid ball joint and a very springy ball socket, you could make combined together. You could make a limb that holds good retention. So that's what we're going with. We no longer need to have nuts and bolts anymore, or someone to assemble these things with nuts and bolts. They could just snap and fit it together, like that video I sent you.
Ah, there we go.
And so that is very close to the final product have is that video I sent you.
Yeah. Ooh. Oh, that's me.
Uh, okay. I could just, I could, I just have this playing in the background. But no, essentially, you start out, and we'll send it to you like this. We'll send you these sprues of material, and this is like this is like the internal frame. So first, you would just snap fit all the internal frame together after you removed it from the sprue, slowly making your internal frame.
Yeah, there you go. So no glue's required for this. It's just, snap together and there you go.
Exactly. You want it snapped together, kind of like a gun plaquette. So you don't even need glue.
Yeah.
If you want to make a permanent pose, then yeah, use glue. But no, definitely glue free. And then all the armor pieces we wanted to snap on, and this took us forever to really make work because sometimes all the spots it snaps in are a little bit too tight, so it's hard to remove the pieces or not.
Yeah. I've had a number of of the models that I've made myself. Yeah, I've had a number of ones where things were just always just not quite, or a little bit not quite loose enough or too loose. It's always like a struggle sometimes.
Yeah. So we hope that we perfect this and then we can release the final product. Since it uses so many different materials, and just to guarantee a level of production quality, we want to make these ourselves and then sell them as a hobby product. So everything that is fully 100% PLA, we'll sell STLs of, and people can print it themselves. But anything that uses like internal frames like this, we'll make it ourselves and we'll sell it online on Etsy and probably Shopify eventually when we do open this up.
Yeah, and already just from this video, you can see where the general gist of it and how well it works together. Already, it looks pretty damn good.
Yeah, I'm getting really excited because after I think we're so close to finishing out with this, and I think the internal frame is just right.
And there's that Wolverine right there.
The Stinger.
Oh, Stinger.
We call it the Needler. One thing about being an artist is that I can draw a legally distinct version of a Stinger. This is called a Needler. So, oh gosh, yeah. So this is right here. This blue guy. This is the Notre Dame. This big green guy is the skull face. And this big red guy right here is a war mall. So we don't make an equivalent product as the rights holders of BattleTech, because we're never going to sell the STLs for these because we're making them ourselves. So someone can't, for example, make a little tiny BattleTech scale version of what we made. So
smart.
We're not making the same product that they make. We're making an action figure. We're not making a war game toy.
Yeah.
Even though if you wanted to use these in a 28 millimeter scale war game, you could.
I mean, it's not like anybody can stop you from using Legos for that either.
Yeah, but since it's all designs that I personally made, it's fairly legally distinct. And yes, and over here on the far right is the Needler. Very much, we named it kind of like the Needler from Halo.
Yeah.
You got enough machine guns to be a Needler. And so I want to quickly show you. We have so much art because eventually we want to cover a whole bunch of mechs. And so I have to do redesigns of everything that there's available. And there's always going to be someone's like, hey, can you make this mech? It's like, eventually we'll get around to it.
Yeah, eventually we can make something that's not quite that, but close enough that you could recognize it.
Exactly. We eventually want to cover a whole bunch of Western style mecha, because Japan is like, you could get mecha for Armored Core, you can get it for Votoms, you can get it for Gundam. We kind of want to provide that outlet for people who want to make a model kit of Titanfall, of those robots from Avatar,
the amp suits.
James Cameron's Avatar, and we want to provide that product. And so we have a bunch of designs we have, and eventually we'll get around to this. We got the Matrix mechs. So like the big APU dock security mechs from the Matrix films. We want to get around to all
with
of these
actual
eventually.
proper armor to protect the pilot too.
Yeah, it's like we also want to do it to the reason why there's like a armored paneling there is that we want to provide the equivalent of options whenever you make a mech. One of our mech bay kits, they're going to have an optional chest piece and optional weapons so that you can kind of customize these. And the chest piece, like, oh, we have two Warhawks here. We want to provide two different looking Warhawks, and so that you can, oh, I like this chess piece better. And sometimes what that different chess piece represents, it could represent a different manufacturer, a different clan that might have made it, or a different, like a more advanced variant that was made later in the timeline.
Yeah, nice.
And so we want to have a little bit of customization for, even if you just bought one of these model kits, you'll get customization for it. So like we have this Kodiak here. We have two different Kodiak designs, two different Shadowhawk designs, two different Dasher designs, but not Shadowhawk, Shadowcat. Yeah, there's too many shadows. One time we even took these our test prints and we had a game of Dice Wars with them.
Nice.
So we did all the stats for them, and we had infantry running about, and we had stats for the infantry, and we had stats for smaller mechs and tanks and all that stuff, and we had proper war game with them. So
yeah, see, that's one of the useful things about these. Like, not only are they useful for gaming, but also just, well, obviously for gaming, but also for display, for just, playing as general action figures. So there's a lot of options of what you can actually do with these things, provided they're durable enough to be able to, handle all those different uses.
And this is an example of how, since they use a universal internal frame, you could mix and match like humanoid mechs. If you get chicken walker mechs, they probably won't mix and match well at all. But if you like, humanoid to humanoid mech, you could mix and match these. So you can get a Notre Dame and give it the weapons of the skull face, and you could get a Dakadam. We get more lasers, the Maul arm. We got Maul arms, the Maul brawler, the War face, the Burt. Because like one of the skull faces gets a big minigun on its arm as one of its optional weapons.
As is tradition.
So you could, and then we get the cursed Mega Man. as I took the Needler and I put the skull face arms and head on it.
Oh boy.
It was so cursed, but it's Mega Man. So like, yeah, because these are things you can, when we take a lot of effort to make it so that you can, after you've put something onto the internal frame, you can pull it off.
Yeah, that's going to be important for customizability. Yeah.
So just like a Bionicle, you could just make your own custom Franken-mechs from all the kits that we're eventually going to make.
Nice. I mean, that's an added bonus to get multiples.
And we have a lot of plans because we have like light mechs, medium mechs, heavy mechs, and / assault mechs. We want to get things within like the protomech size, like Votom size, which are like half the size of the Needler here. And we want to even get the equivalent of minifigs for these guys, and then infantry scale minifigs. Heck, we already have one. We'll share art of that posts of that eventually, but it's essentially like a Lego minifig. It's got moving arms and legs, but not complete articulation. And every box set is going to come with a little tiny, essentially Innisphere standard power armor minifig that comes with these.
Nice. That's always something, something I appreciate with mech figures and stuff like that. Having something that actually gives you an idea of what the actual scale is compared to a person.
Oh yeah. So every kit is going to come with, and eventually we plan to sell like these minifigs in their own like box sets. But for right now, you're going to come with a free minifig with each one of these kits.
Nice.
And so since these are all quote unquote Innisphere mechs, they're going to come with a standard issue Innisphere battle armor. Although we call it the GIPA for general issued power armor. And so, but when we do clan mechs, we'll have an elemental that goes with them. If we do Titanfall, we'll have a little pilot that goes with them,
Nice.
and so on and so forth. And so we have a lot of plans for this, and we want to really get this going. But for right now, we're going to have 4 mechs, and we call these waves. So wave 1, you'll get these 4 mechs, and you can buy each of them individually. And we eventually want to sell like big bundle sets. They're technically a little bit cheaper to get all 4 of them.
Yeah, makes sense.
But for right now, the price range with cost of materials and packaging, it's got to range from $30 to $40.
That's not too bad
for each of these. So yeah, and it's like this Atlas, this skull face. Let me see. Where's it? I have a picture here. So for example, here's the skull face. Here's some basic 28mm infantry. Here's the Gippa, one of our own design mechs from our Millmen.
Mm-hmm.
And so that you could kind of see the scale of this. And this right here is an Imperial Knight. Now, this was a project my brother did because he has a fantasy dwarfs army from Warhammer Fantasy. So he used an Imperial Knight to make a fantasy mecha dwarf abomination.
I got some friends who love that.
Yeah, but this is an Imperial Knight. This is the same size as an Imperial Knight. So the Atlas is slightly larger than Imperial Knight. So if someone wanted to, they can buy one of our figures, put it on an Imperial Knight base, and run this in a game of 40K. It's like, hey, that's my Imperial Knight. And they're like, what the hell is that? It's a skull face.
Yes. Are you not up on the lore?
It came from the Night of Battletech. It came from the Night World of Battletech. So yeah, that means like heavy mechs are essentially a slightly smaller. Medium mechs are a little slightly smaller than that. So you kind of get that size range of how big these things are. And Imperial Knight these days, GW, and their horrible pricing, these are like $150 for an Imperial Knight.
Yikes.
So for roughly $40, you get this much plastic.
That is definitely way more bang for your buck. That's for damn sure.
Yeah. Now, it's not going to have all the details in the world. We're still working with PLA. We're not working with resin printing, which can get you more detail. But what's nice about PLA is that it's cheaper and you can mass produce it fairly readily.
Yeah. Plus, at least for the kinds of mechs we're dealing with here, they typically have more like angular plating. There's not necessarily all that much surface detail in terms of it's not like, some of the Gundams I've seen on the store shelves where it's just like covered in spikes and you can't even tell if it's a robot or like a porcupine anymore.
Yeah. That is one of my gripes when it comes to a lot of modern mech design, is that there's too many details and you lose the general shape of the mech. This goes for both Battletech, Mech Warrior. Battletech CGL has been really good at the design of their mechs recently, but Mech Warrior, the Mech Warrior games have some of the worst detailing, and Gundam has only gotten worse over time. But I kind of very much where it's like simpler is better when it comes to mech design, because it's so much easier to see the shape of this.
Yeah. Also, not to forget about ballistic cloth, which I've seen you use on a lot of the mechs you've designed.
Yeah. I'm not sure if we'll ever get around to that. It's doing cloth as far as PLA goes. That's a little bit more challenging. Well, we'll see where we get around to it. I was going to say something. As far as if you want to see examples of Colony Wars 2060, we have actually made minifigures of it.
Indeed, yeah. There's a couple of those available on your Etsy store here. You've got, let's see, the Russian Alexander, 30mm Gatling cannon, 150mm rifle. Nice stuff.
Oh yeah, these things are about the size. This Alexander right here, this Russian mech, is about the size of a light mech. And so like these jackalopes, this green mech right here, these American jackalopes are about proto-mech size, if you will. Yeah. And so, yeah, we eventually want to make more designs of these. Right now we have a gosh, what's it called? You can get these for free on our Thingiverse page. My brother has a Thingiverse page. I'll share that with you. So I'll share that.
Yeah, links for that stuff will be in the video description.
Yeah. So yeah, if someone wanted to, they can print this. We even have a protomech, the Centaur,
Yeah, which
available.
is also the one of the protagonists from that comic that you created as well.
Yes, this thing is on web. The fan the fan comic I'm making is currently on hiatus. I have too many things to draw, and it takes a lot of it. Like the when I made 1 second. Sorry about that. I was coughing out alone. Anyway, no, when I made that web comic, it is very much I didn't have a job at the time, so I had all the time in the world to make a comic. Now I have a job, and I'm also working on a bunch of other projects, so currently on hiatus.
Yeah, these
But
things
I do
happen.
have,
I've got a whole
yeah,
bunch of things in the back burner myself, so.
mhm. But I do have a love for the Protomechs in BattleTech. No one loves Protomechs, but I love Protomechs. Okay, people love Protomechs. Some people like Protomechs, but a lot of people didn't like them. And admittedly, part of the reason is that the original designs of Protomechs were a little.
Fucking
It's an
weird.
acquired taste. It's an acquired
They're
taste.
fucking weird.
It's like sushi. Not everyone likes sushi, but some people can enjoy sushi.
I mean,
But I
usually
was like,
sushi doesn't look like it's staring at you.
but
Or
I was
like,
like, hey, you know what? So like I started redesigning a lot of the Protomechs, and I wanted to make a fan comic of it. And I eventually want to make model kits for all these Protomechs. So I was like, hey, you like Protomechs, but you don't like the design of the original Protomech. So here we have some Protomechs here. So we have a Thingiverse page for this. Ah, there it is. There is the link. I'll send that to you. I'll go ahead and stop screen sharing. How do I stop that?
it's the first time we've done a full screen share in one of these interviews. That's pretty cool.
Assuming control.
Assume to control this form.
Yeah, I sent you a Thingiverse page, and that's my brother's Thingiverse. So if you look at the other options he has those Jackalopes and the Alexanders. If you ever want
Yeah.
to
The Alexander's a
try
quad
that out.
mech. Do you have any thoughts about doing for the mech based stuff? Do you have any thoughts about doing like quad mech as well for those kinds of vehicles?
Yes, eventually, and because these all require their own unique internal frame. So that's going to be someday in the future. We're going to design a chicken walker internal frame. We're going to design something that's like a quad mech, and we'll have a couple of options. But we do want to get around to doing eventually the Scorpion, the Goliath, the Tarantula, and other famous, well, not so famous BattleTech mechs.
Yeah, those ones most people don't end up talking about very
Just like
much.
the Protomechs, the quad mechs
Yeah.
don't get a lot of love.
Which, it's kind of odd because you'd think those ones would be more common on battlefields because, they are the equivalent. If a mech is the equivalent of, the IFV slash tank, then obviously you'd have also something bigger in this case, which is those quad mechs, being on the heavier artillery pieces and stuff like that.
I imagine it's a rules issue people have with it. Like the Protomechs, some people don't like the rules as well.
Yeah, I think
So it's
that's the
like,
main problem with the lambs too.
yeah, it's like it's a rules issue. Like if for example, BattleTech was a game that was at larger scale, so that you had hundreds of battle mechs, you're not going to care about bringing a squad of protomechs or a couple of quad mechs because it doesn't hurt you if they get destroyed easily. But since BattleTech is a skirmish scale game, generally most people bring 4 mechs apiece. You're going to take your favorite mechs
Yeah.
and the best mechs.
Unless you want to lose.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or
that's
you
one
could
of the
just
things
bring
I
it,
always
or you
liked
could,
about. Yeah, that's one of the things I always liked about the heavy gear RPG or in the RPG and tactical game, was the original ones, is that they were really good about scaling things up and down. Like the Jovian Chronicles setting also had that game Lightning Strike that was associated with that one, where it very much was that the strategic level where you're moving army units around instead of just single units. You're moving armies around the solar system, getting into stuff of the whole economic and diplomatic side to things. I always in the opinion that one of the strengths that a good war game slash RPG should have is that scalability, using those same rules, just applying. This is something that AD&D actually does relatively well too. Is that even going back all that and you don't even need another system for that. You can just have, okay, this unit represents 20 units or 100 units, and that's your army as you move it around the battlefield. And then if you want to scale down, you just like, okay, this unit I have on the map now is just one of those 100. And I'm setting off on a little scouting mission in this dungeon.
Yeah, I'm like 40K is really good at this. I first started playing Warhammer 40K by playing Kill Team. I got like a couple of Killicans and a couple of orcs. I play orcs. I played orcs when I played 40K, and a squad of orcs, a couple of Killicans, and that was my kill team. And um, eventually, just keep buying model kits. Kept buying, and then I could play normal scale 40K. And keep buying model kits. Keep buying model kits. Hey, I can play Apocalypse scale 40K. So yeah, that capability to easily scale is really important for a war game, I think. I think BattleTech struggles with that. They have Alpha Strike, but you have a lot of BattleTech players that just do not like Alpha Strike.
I think the main issue is that it abstracts away a lot of the things that they like about BattleTech. At least that's my understanding with that, which I suppose is necessary if you're going to run something that much larger scale on a similar time frame. That's one way of doing it. There are probably other ways of doing it that may retain the amount of granularity that you're looking for. But obviously, it's going to be a trade-off in terms of time and complexity versus, the amount of stuff you can bring to war. Plus, you got to think also the space it would take. Because, okay, I can do like this 100 army of units that I can have and have them all, on the proper scale. I just don't have a table big enough to put it all on.
Yeah.
So you do have to have a certain degree of abstraction, like the whole, this unit represents 100 mechs or, whatever for this army or something like
Going
that.
from this tile of the game board to this tile of the game board is technically hundreds of meters instead of one tile to one tile.
Yeah. Which is one of the things, like, going back again to Heavy Gear, what I liked is that it was all just multiplications. This scale, this unit of measurement, which is the same unit of measurement you're using throughout the entire thing, is times 10 here, times 5 here, times 1 here, and the same thing applies to damage and stuff like that. So really, you keep the same stats for everything. It's just, changing a bit of multiplication, which honestly is not that complicated.
Yeah. It's always got to be a challenge for a lot of these game systems. And a problem with, even if you make the best game system out there, is it's a war game. You need people to play with.
Networking
Exactly.
is key.
And that is a lot easier said than done when it comes to a lot of these war games. And when it comes to like I've tried to play war games on Tabletop Simulator. I don't know. There's something where when you remove like physical minis from the equation, a lot of investment just goes out the window. Because I liked assembling my 40K orc minis, and if I can't bring them to a game, and I'm instead working with some video game that I still have to do all the rolls for, it's like, I'm not as interested anymore.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, if you're going to be playing a video game, have one where you just click the button and it does everything that you need. Yeah, that's the strength that video games have over tabletop, is that they can do all the calculations and the dice rolling in the background and make it look pretty.
Yeah, but you can't. As far as a lot of these war games, they don't want to have a competitor, and I can understand why they don't want to have a competitor.
Of course not.
To their
why
war
would you
game.
want to? Because the more competitors you have, like the more games you have in a space, the more spread out your player base often is. Unless one of them just takes the lion's share of the player base, in which case, well, you're better off supporting that one with your supplements or games or whatever instead of trying to create your own, because they have the ones with the players. That's the reason D&D is the number one, regardless of its overall quality over the years. Same thing for Games Workshop. The same thing, you usually have like the big guy and the one that's kind of second, and then you have everybody else.
Oh yeah, like we wanted to, capture a little bit of that Dice Wars, a little bit easier to play, something you could teach someone fairly easily. We have a free PDF. I sent you that link to the free PDF.
Well, I bought the full thing actually, and it's only 52 pages.
Oh yeah, and like all that artwork in there, I probably bit off more than a chew, but all that artwork is mine. I can tell you have a very distinct style to you. The style of amateur artist.
I mean, hell, it's better than what I saw in the original D&D book, so
Well, I appreciate that.
Plus full color, so hey, that's more than a lot of people I managed to do in their books.
Yeah. If we ever make more Dice Wars supplement books, we're gonna definitely gotta go for black and white. And luckily, I've done a crap ton of black and white BattleTech art. So if we
Mhm.
do a Mech Bay Dice Wars book where it includes a heat mechanic, jump jets, and all the other stuff, we'll use my Mech Bay, my black and white art I've been doing a lot of, and you don't have to pay as much for uh, mostly black and white pages and just a
Yeah,
color
there you go.
cover.
Plus, easier to print out and have as a physical reference as well while you're playing.
Exactly.
Yeah, if I had one recommendation, it's not just to go with the heat, but also like if you have an option between heat and just like an energy pool or something like that, just to represent like the amount of energy your generator is generating. Because I see a lot of people just blindly copying heat from BattleTech, and at some point it starts niggling me a little bit. So having some options in that regard is always good.
Yeah.
Just
Well, we kind of want to keep it on a little bit on the simpler end, so we're not going to go that far.
yeah,
Yeah, but we do have, a bunch of other systems for Dice Wars, and we want to expand a little bit when um, it comes to adding more of a mech focus of the setting. So we'll even have rules that are like, hey, you want to bring a tank? It's not exactly a mech, so it has slightly different rules, and it
mhm.
costs slightly different to the other to the mechs. And so yeah, we're play testing that, and eventually we're gonna create a supplement after we've officially produced the first wave of Mech Bay kits
Yeah.
and a couple of waves of Mech Bay kits, and we'll make a supplementary book for it.
Nice. That's always something I like for these kinds of things where when you create a line of, action figures or minis or something like that, and then have the stats for them that you can then use in whichever, system that
Mm-hmm.
goes with it, which is always
Mm-hmm.
handy, I find. It's always something like, I think it's almost a missed opportunity for the BattleTech books where I don't think they ever had like the stats for the mechs and stuff like that in the back of the book or something. That would have been kind
Mm,
of cool.
yeah. Oh yeah. True that. They had some artwork sometimes.
Mhm.
But yeah, but what's nice about Dice Wars is that if you do get Dice Wars, you don't have to play it with our model kits or our models that or minifigs that we're going to make for it, because you could just play it with whatever you can get around the house.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the things I liked about this. Like, you basically, it's a very easy to stat out anything that you want based on the capabilities that you think it should have. If you want to make something that's gloriously overpowered, you can. You can max out the whole
Mhm.
damn thing. It's just gonna cost you like if you have a 100 point army. I think what is the full cost of a single maxed out unit? I think it's like 24 dice, if I'm not mistaken, something like that.
Uh, yes, I believe you're right.
Yeah, that's almost, if you have like a hundred dice army, that's almost a quarter. So you can
Mhm.
make like a four super maxed out units against your opponent's. Okay, I'm gonna make like everything 2 dice, so like 50. And sure, you're gonna slaughter a whole bunch of them that are gonna wear you down over
Yeah,
time just from sheer numbers. So
yeah. As like for example, like to use 40K as an easy example, you can make an army of like four Imperial Knights, give them all the greatest stats, and your opponent can bring a whole crap ton of kilocans from the orcs, and it's just like a 35 kilocans going after four gigantic imperial knights. So yeah, we like wanted to have that flexibility of army building, unit construction, and all that stuff. What's fun
mhm.
about every time you have mechs is that they since their all their abilities are represented by kind of like how you build it is how much it costs. So you can make an easy system where, oh, I've suffered 5 damage to this mech, so I'm going to remove 5 things from my mech, and luckily you get to choose what you remove. So every time you've determined damage at the end of the phase, you have to make the decision. Okay, I have to take damage, but do I want to keep my weapons? Or do I want to keep my armor? Or do I want to keep my other equipment? So it kind of gives you that little bit of extra meta gaming.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is, I'm looking here at page 41. The damage happens. The turns are essentially simultaneous, even though there's
Mhm.
things going in different orders. But the effects of damage aren't felt until the end of the round,
Mhm.
so to speak. Which
Yeah.
means
So
that everybody still gets to act in spite of the fact that one unit might have been destroyed, but still managed to get its swing in. So
oh yeah,
you have possibilities of mutually assured destruction in that way.
exactly. Definitely one of the things I wanted to avoid because I played 40K and you can get Alpha Strike at the very beginning of the game and completely wiped off the table if your opponent brought all the best toys. Happened a lot to me. My brother plays Tau. I play Orcs. I'm a melee army. It happened a lot to me when I was when that happened. So it's like simultaneous turns and also all damage is calculated at the end of the round. This was inspired from the 8th edition 40K. They came out with a new version of Apocalypse, and that's how they did wounds. You tracked wounds, all units suffered during the round, and then at the end of the round, you then removed things from wounds. So you'll never get one-shotted in a turn. So we wanted to take that type of mechanic when we designed Dice Wars.
Yeah, it's very useful. As you say, prevents alpha strikes, and it means that you never have like your favorite unit just get completely wiped out first. Okay, but you still manage to use it at least once, so it's never a complete waste of your turn.
Yeah, so it's like we hope that it was pretty fun. Like we've been to like 3 conventions. One year we sold the Dice Wars books, and then the next convention we went to the same convention. The kids that came up to us was like, "Hey, yeah, we've been playing your Dice Wars book this whole entire time." And these kids are like, ranging from 18 to like 14. So like it kind of works if you want to teach new people how to play a war game. But it was cool to see them enjoy this game so far, and I think we've kind of did a good balance of rule granularity and rule detail while keeping things a little bit on the simpler side and quick side. If you ever get around to playing a game of this, I want to hear your experience from it, because just to see how it's like, oh, we played this on a Tuesday because we had a few hours free, and so it took us a short amount of time to stat all the robots we wanted to bring onto the table, and then we played it, and it took a few hours, and it was a fun beers and pretzels type game.
Yeah, I mean, depending on even just the size of the amount of dice you just bring to the table, like in terms of like how much you want to distribute to any particular unit, you could do like a full just for like an intro. You could do like a robot jocks kind of thing, just 2 mechs, one against the other, each determined with their own particular styles and stuff like that. Maybe create a couple of spectator stands you can just accidentally step on, just like in the movie.
Achilles. Oh, I love that movie. Me and my brother.
I'm gonna get in that robot and I'm gonna kick your ass.
Oh, I love it. It's such a good movie.
They really should have made more live action 80s live action giant robot movies.
Yeah,
there's Robot Jocks. There's Gunhead, which is the Japanese one. There aren't that many, I think. I mean, obviously there's Mechagodzilla and all those things from the Toho movies, but not quite the same thing really in terms of style and
I think it could have done better during the heyday of stop motion. Stop motion during movies, because it's like by the time Robot Jocks was made, it was already kind of like people were looking towards what can we use CGI wise, and it would be a long time before we got a proper CGI mech movie, which is technically Michael Bay Transformers.
Technically.
It's like, I remember bright-eyed and bushy-tailed seeing the first Michael Bay Transformers movie as a kid and being like, man, they can totally make a Battletech movie now.
But will they?
No.
Yeah. I mean, we remember what happened when they decided to make a Battletech cartoon.
You know what? I actually love the Battletech cartoon.
Yeah. It's better than the Heavy Gear cartoon. Let's face it.
Yes. Oh gosh, I tried rewatching the Heavy Gear cartoon. It is painful. That is pure pain. That's what sets like it's not even comparable to Roughnecks. Starship Troopers Roughnecks, because Heavy Gear cartoon is like, hey, it's like happy fun time with kids, and it's like it's about a tournament. No, there's no big stakes. In comparison, Battletech cartoon, like there's a war going on, man. People will die.
My home planet. Literally, his home planet has been attacked, and eventually we by the end of it, the entire population's been taken.
Exactly, and then in Roughnecks, Starship Troopers Roughnecks. It's all about a continuous invasion. People die, and
Yeah.
Earth eventually gets attacked, and it gets like the stakes are like just crank up
Yeah.
from there.
And you have an example of what happens when a species loses to the bugs with the
Hmm.
skinnies. We realize their entire species has been enslaved through control
Hmm.
bugs attached to their spines.
Mm,
It's like
yeah,
that's what's waiting for us. Keep fighting.
yeah. So it's like there's just a big difference when it comes to like storytelling.
Mm,
Heavy Gear cartoon, good execution, but poor storytelling.
yeah.
You know,
I mean,
and like
also,
heck,
yeah, yeah. No, go ahead.
even uh, gosh, Exo Squad had
Mhm.
a lot more mature story.
Oh, true, true. I mean, also a great continuity. Like the entire first season, like first couple episodes, is pretty much like literally previously on Exo Squad is at the start of each episode. So like there's
Hmm.
continuous continuity going from
Hmm.
one episode to the next. There's always that that through line going through it. Even when there's literally a 1 year time jump when the cast is put in prison under military for mutiny that they technically kind of get away with because they don't get executed, which is actually threatened. The main character of the series is under threat of execution because the hard-ass, dumbass superior thinks that he committed mutiny when he really was just telling him not to do something stupid. And it's like, holy shit, are they actually going to kill our main character here? Because they do kill characters during that season too. There's one lady that duries during an airdrop, and is like,
Yeah,
okay,
I
we're
remember
not
seeing that.
fucking
Like,
around here.
I remember seeing that. I was like, oh, she's dead.
Yeah, she comes
uh,
back, but not like that. It's just like there's a reason for that, and it's not good.
yeah. Unfortunately, today I would love to see a new BattleTech cartoon with the CGI we're capable of these days, but I
Mm,
just can't trust anybody in the West to make it. It'd have to be made from a Japanese company, like a cyberpunk Edge Runners.
mm.
It's like I don't think any Western company could have made as good of a story as Cyberpunk Edge Runners. So you kind of have to, if you're going to make a BattleTech cartoon, you're going to have to kind of rely on the Japanese to do both the story and the animation.
Yeah, or what was the name of? Yeah, there's also Shinji Aramaki. He's the guy who did Maddox 00, Maddox 01. He also did that CG version of Pirate Captain Harlock, and also
Mm.
the two Starship Troopers CGI movies, Invasion and Traitor of Mars.
Yeah.
Yeah, also did Appleseed Alpha, which I stand by as a really, really good anime. Read that one.
I preferred the previous CGI Appleseed movies, but that's a taste thing.
Yeah, I like those two, but this one I liked quite a bit too.
Mm.
But that guy I would trust with a BattleTech anime.
That'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, he's guys shown he can already do the technical stuff, and the stories are actually pretty good too. So the guy really seems to know what he's doing.
Mm. Definitely.
Yeah, uh, yeah, because yeah, definitely. Oh man, look at the credits on this guy. He's done everything from. Oh yeah, he's done so. This guy knows what he did. Oh, he worked on Gasaraki. He did mechanical design on that.
It seems like, as far as when it comes to Japan, mechanical animators, mechanical designers are kind of like ubiquitous because like most animators for anime are like do character designs, character animations for
Mm.
people and stuff like that. You don't really see that for mecha because it probably takes a little bit more effort to make mecha. That's why all mecha coming from Japan is CGI now because it's easier to animate that way, even though it might cost more.
Then
And
again,
so,
also a lot of the anime itself, just the animation is done on computers nowadays compared to how it
mhm,
was in the '90s, '80s, and '90s.
mhm,
And you can tell, quite frankly, most of the time, especially when the budget is not quite enough to smooth everything out.
yeah. So, but as far as entertainment these days, gosh, it's been difficult because none of the games I want to play exist. None of the anime I really want to watch exist. Everything's like the same movies over and over and over again.
Mm.
Gosh, I'm so bored. That's why I draw so much nowadays because I'm trying to hold back that ennui, that that boredom from consuming me.
Well, we all have to do something. I mean, there's a couple of things that are coming that could be interesting. Creek's Front Tactics is one I'm looking forward to in the mech
Mhm.
space. That one's got our aesthetic down pat. Frankly,
Yeah.
there's a couple other things, but I think that really ultimately it's people in the indie space doing these kinds of things that ultimately are going to provide the kind of things that you and I want to do because
Yeah.
obviously what we like is a bit more of a specific niche, and specific niches are, well, obviously not necessarily the thing that most AAA companies are going to be willing to look at because they want the mass demographic kind of thing.
Yeah.
So for everything else, well, you gotta look around a little bit more.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm just waiting for the perfect game,
Yeah.
the perfect game that has all the things I want inside of it. It's never gonna happen.
I've actually been thinking what I would really love to see is a cross between Command and Conquer Renegade, Metal Gear Solid 5, and one of those RTSs where you can blow up absolutely everything.
Mm,
Like, imagine something where in MGS5 you can like call in reinforcements, call in resupplies and stuff like that. What if you could call in a squad of soldiers or a couple of tanks to come and help you fight enemy base or something like that? It's like, okay, go attack this area, to distract them so they can lure away a bunch of guys. And then we're gonna come in with our heavy assault mechs coming in there and literally smash our way through the base.
oh,
Yeah,
I would
take out
what
the
I
power supply so all the automated defenses shut down and all that kind of stuff. The kind of stuff that you do in like a Command and Conquer game,
Yeah.
but on the ground, but with a bit more destructibility and a bit more stuff happening in terms of like
Yeah.
people around and being able to jump in all the vehicles and stuff like that. That'd be something I'd love to do.
Um, like my idea of a perfect game is something like Battlefront or like Bannerlord, where it's all about, you could make an army of mecha and whatnot. It'd be in the scale of Titanfall slash
Hmm.
Heavy Gear slash Votoms, and it'd have the customization for mechs like BattleTech. If it's like kind of like Bannerlord, then you get to slowly grow a pile of an army of mechs that you can lead into battle and have some minor RTS controls. But
Hmm.
those mechs might not be as customizable as your own personal mech. And your own personal mech would be like, Mech Warrior style customization. And I
Yeah,
just want to,
because if you're thinking about something like that scale, that number of mechs, imagine having to customize each one of those
no, yeah.
manually. That'd be a
So
pain in
it's
the
like,
ass.
it's like I want this squad of mechs that perform this role, so they'll come with these weapons, and eventually, like, oh, I got them better weapons, and so they'll all get that weapon, something like
Hmm.
that. But I want to just feel like I'm on the boots on the ground, right among, fighting amongst two-story buildings in some small mechs, but in massive numbers. I want this to feel like a war instead of about a fight between four guys versus four guys. I want to have waves upon waves of men dying on the battlefield in mecha machines and that are shooting heavy autocannons and just like it's like the watching the first one of the OVAs from Votoms. You get to see the massive amount of mechs fighting out on the battlefield and just how easily they die. And it's just there is something about that aesthetic. And I don't
Hmm.
want to be the hero. I want to be that random grunt there. I might be the commander, but I'm still technically a grunt. I'm still in as squishy as a mech as everybody else. I'm just in charge of these grunts as we're fighting on the battlefield, and people are dying. And I just want to have that feel, that boots on the ground type feel. It's
Man,
like Creek's Front Tactics is going to be great, but it's like turn-based mecha games are a dime a dozen. Let's be honest here.
it's true. There's quite a few of those.
Yeah.
There's really not that many RTS or third person games like that have that particular feel to it.
Hmm. I mean, so it's it's like it's never going to happen because people are going to have to really want to are going to have to enjoy the exact same things I enjoy.
Yeah, it's difficult. That's for damn sure. I mean, trying to find something that like the closest thing I think is probably like RTS, like the Call to Arms series or stuff like
Yeah.
that, where you have that kind of direct control and things where you can actually go down to the ground level and
Mhm.
actually actively control any unit on the battlefield to
Well,
shoot manually and stuff
yeah,
like that, which
yeah,
is
but that's why I like bring up Bannerlord. So like it doesn't have to have like the RTS style and
mm,
base management and all that stuff because Bannerlord is like a campaign system where you like take your little squad and you go around the map and you slowly collect more men from all these from all these cities. You can control cities and whatnot. But as far as gameplay goes, you are playing over your shoulder as the commander, and then you have your legions of infantry that you've slowly been building over time, and you give them simple commands: line up, charge, raise shields, and stuff like that, and just translate that to kind of massed mecha combat.
Yeah, call down orbital strike.
Oh yeah. It's like call in the air support. I have my squad of tanks over there. I want you to come in from the flank. So yeah, that would be so great.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I definitely would love to see. There was a game that did like Mountain Blade, but modern, called Freeman Guerrilla Warfare or whatever it was called. That one sucked. I hated that one. I tried playing it. It was just janky as fuck.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. It's like, we have to rely on a bunch of indie developers, and indie developers are making their own stuff. It's like, I wish I was smart enough to code a game. At this point, I'm only smart enough to draw a robot.
I mean, I'm glad you are at least that smart, so because it gives me some cool stuff to look at, and eventually it's going to give me some cool, mech action figures to buy, which is always good too.
Yeah.
So speaking of which, so where can people reach you if they want to know more about all of this? We mentioned the Etsy store, the Thingiverse page. Where else?
To keep track of updates on the Mech Bay product itself, and if we work more on any just model kits that we want to make for Armilmen or Colony Wars, we have Mech Bay on Twitter, X. So follow them, because my brother runs that account, and so whenever there's new videos of all of our projects we're working on, that's where you're going to find it. And he'll repost my art. I have my own art account, but I mostly focus on my art on there, and that's Real Mech is Love on Twitter. If you want to, as far as see is what galleries of my art, then my DeviantArt, Jarom C as in cat, Jarom C Swenson on DeviantArt is where you can find my art. But if you want to keep track of all that, keep track of it on our Twitter Mech Bay Figures page. We have a web page. It's called realmechislove.com. We'll update that as soon as we get more stuff. But there you can find our Dice Wars, where to buy our Dice Wars book, including the free PDF. You can check out links for the Protomech web comic. You can check out links for Colony Wars art galleries, where you can get the Armilmen STLs from Etsy. You can check links there. So if you go to realmechislove.com, that is, eventually we'll have a Mech Bay and all of its links and to its Etsy sells.
What did I say about you being busy?
too many. They got too many irons on this fire.
Well, the links to all those irons are going to be in the description below. Mr. Swenson, thank you very much for coming on the show. It's been a blast.
Oh, it's been a blast. Thank you very much for, talking to me about this. Not many people to talk to in person about this.
Well, the fact that we actually share the similar tastes in mechs, it definitely helps in that regard. And hopefully there's a whole bunch of other people who do too, who are, more than prepared to send you a couple of dollars once you got some stuff to sell.
Hopefully enough to quit my job.
Yeah, that's the dream, isn't it? Well, thanks again for coming on. Thanks everybody for watching. For Mr. Swenson and myself, we're ejecting. Mm-hmm. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All primary objectives complete. Mission successful.